What should we address today? Any questions?
The thing that's in my mind is about comfort, contentment. Why it's the mission for the person to find that perfect thing, and why or how even Nirvana becomes that thing.
To be given up?
Just the ultimate comfort.
Why is Nibbana the ultimate comfort? Is that the question?
Is it?
No. You're asking. See, the question usually holds within it a lot. If it's a true, genuinely loaded question, loaded in a good sense, pursuing truth, wisdom, a genuine question, asking for a genuine answer, it has within it, at least partially, aspects of the answer that it's seeking. That's been my experience. There was an incident where Venerable Sariputta was there. I think there was also Venerable Mahakotita. And there was a discussion on craving. And the senses, or the objects that the senses pick up. And from what I recall, I think it was Venerable Sariputta that gave the example of the two oxen, one white, one black, and they're joined together by a yoke, two-eyed yoke. So wherever one ox went, the other had to follow. The white ox, let's call it the senses, and the black ox, let's call him the object of the senses, let's say, a delightful object, a visible object to be seen, a delightful sound, a delightful mental state, a memory, and for the rest of the senses the same. And they were asking whoever was there too to see as to what is the thing that is binding the two. Is it, or are they the six senses, or are they whatever the six senses pick up? And of course the answer was neither, because it's the yoke that's holding them tied together. That's the craving. Sometime later, that simile was also put to use by the lay noble disciple, Chitta of Alavi. No, Chitta actually. That was Hattaka of Alavi. And he was already an anagami. And he was known to give discourses and Dhamma talks and clarifying Dhamma talks to bhikkhus. So one time he's in his own territory. He was very, very wealthy. He was giving, he had come in from one of his long journeys on business. So he sees a group of monks, elders, sitting there talking, and he asks one of his servants, employees, what are those venerable ones discussing? Do you know? He didn't want to just jump in or, you know. He was very respectful because he's a noble disciple. And they say, oh, I think they're talking about craving. So he approaches them respectfully, bows, and then he says, what's the nature of the discussion, Bantes? And they bring up the same issue, basically, that was discussed by Venerable Sariputta earlier. And that was, which one is at fault? Is it the object? Is it the thing that you're seeing? Or the lovely thoughts you're having? The lovely images? The delightful memories? The delightful touch, tactile objects? The wonderful music or sound or songs that you're hearing? What are they to blame? Or is it the senses? Because throughout the ages, people have, especially those who are on the quest for awakening or some spiritual attainment, they've always looked down upon the body. They've always looked down upon the six senses. And one of the ways was to do self-mortifications. Punish yourself. Deprive yourself. Austerities come to mind. Which was seen as the ultimate form of cleansing, which had to be done in order for the spiritual, the sublime, to come and inhabit the body, to cleanse you, because it's pure now. You still see this in modern day, so-called modern day religions even, around the world. So, one camp was saying that. The other said, no, it's the six objects that get picked up by these six senses. And Chitta goes up and says, well, it's similar to this, Venerables. Imagine you have a white ox and a black ox, and they're tied together at the yoke, at the neck with a yoke. Which one is pulling the other? And they say, is it the white? They say no. Is it the black? They say no. What is it? Then it's the yoke. He says, that's it. It's craving. So the objects themselves have nothing to do with it, essentially. Ultimately. Neither do the six senses are to blame, because so long as you are alive, a healthy person, you will have these six senses functioning. Now, of course, some people take this to an extreme and they'll say, well, as long as it's there, we're going to enjoy them, the six objects. Why should I stay away from something that's delightful? Why should I stay away from something that's beautiful to look at, etc., etc.? It's up to me, so I have to make sure I don't have a craving. Well, you're a long way from that. Most of us are. There have been many efforts and even religious traditions that have come about. Some are still in practice today. Some are even in Buddhism or wearing some Buddhist title, but they're there, that promote the pursuit of enjoying, delighting in, basically the yoke. They don't see the yoke. That's the problem. They don't see the craving. The ignorance is so thick that they don't see that it is yoked. They're simply justifying it because their ignorance is compelling them to go after the six senses, as evidenced by the fact that they are in pain. Addiction is suffering. Most people don't see it that way. They don't even consider it until you state it like that. An addict is a person who's never satisfied. They are the quintessential donkey that's trying to take a bite from that carrot dangling in front of him. They are always setting themselves up for another bite, another fall, another bite, another fall, and disappointment, meaning suffering. So they're in a perpetual state of suffering. So Chitta was saying, hold on, the yoke, that's the craving. So coming back to your statement of clarity or contentment or a good state when we get to, or even Nibbana, is it the ultimate state? Is it? Nibbana is not a state, is not a thing, is not a title, is not a stage or a place. Lord Buddha gives a series of antonyms or things that negate what people think Nibbana is or should be. He says a place where there's no, if you want to call it a place, there's no sun, there's no moon, there's no up, there's no down, there's no right, there's no left. But people's brain, like yesterday you were asking about grammar and language and terms and what role does that have in the way we conceive, we perceive things? Everything. But remember, I was also saying how perception, it has its place. It's like a map, but we need to understand it. We need to approach it as such and not worship it. So that's the problem. We love to hold on. We are very much sticky-fingered, especially when it comes to loftier states such as contentment, even especially Nibbana. But remember, it's neither the black ox's fault nor the white ox's. It's the one in between that's holding them tightly, tightly, tightly together, fettered. That is craving. That's lusting. That's the constant thirst. That's the problem. Because on the path, as the person is advancing in their practice, if they are following directions from their teacher correctly, without changing anything, without adding, without subtracting anything as to their pleasure, instead they're just doing it, and they're applying it, and they're pushing themselves further and further and further on the road, there will come a time where they will have to let go of the desire for the Dhamma as well. They have to. And that includes the desire for Nibbana has to be relinquished as well. When you've already relinquished it prior to, that's one of the requirements, which usually naturally flows. If they're practicing it correctly, the heart will speak. You will realize the futility of it, of letting go. But prior to that, you need some guide. You need a map that guides you. Once you have narrowed it down, you know it's down this road. If you keep looking at the map, you're going to miss it. You're going to get agitated, you're going to get nervous, you're going to become very frustrated. And now you're going to miss it. And it's not, if we want to call it like that, it's not Nibbana's fault. It's not the fault of the path. Nor does it say that the path is crooked or flawed, simply because you haven't arrived yet. There's so many factors involved. One of the biggest one is the hurdle of craving and lusting after something, especially if it's something that we haven't had before, something that's really lovely, something that's a respite, which now the mind drops everything else and holds on to this. Well, even if you've been floating about, cast away in the middle of the open water in the oceans, for days, sometimes for weeks, barely have, you're so weak, but you're hanging on to this driftwood. It's become your lifeline. And then you have a ship approach, finally. They spot you, they see you, and they throw in a life raft. They even send down a crew to pick you up in this dinghy or something, a boat to pull you up. You know where this is going, don't you? You're not wanting to let go of that driftwood. That's what we mean by don't hold on to Nibbana, the concept. Not just of Nibbana, but everything else prior to it, like the jhanas, the lofty states that you might get to experience, such as contentment, the one-pointedness, the joy, the happiness, the sense of ease, even getting into that state of equanimity. If you turn that into something to latch onto, guess what? You're not going to get on the boat. Your objective is and has been to get to safety, not glue yourself to the driftwood. But that's what people are doing. Because for those people, to hear the term or statement like, don't hold on to even Nibbana, it's unheard of for them. Most religions, except for the Dhamma taught by the historical Buddha, to clarify, every other religion out there teaches you the opposite. If that's the goal, you need to go after it and immerse yourself in it, throw yourself in it, be lost in it. It is the crown jewel of the spiritual path for those respective traditions. But here, Lord Buddha is saying, there's nothing to hold on. One time in the, you see this in the Sagatavagga Sangyutta, in the Sangyutta Nikaya, the connected or linked discourses, the first major book of it, where you have the verses being exchanged between the devas and different occasions, different discourses. Many, many, many. One of the devas asks Lord Buddha, he says, "Recluse, do you rejoice?" And Lord Buddha says, "On gaining what, friend?" The deva is kind of confused, because the deva is seeing the mind. Many, many devas can actually see you, just like you looking at a jellyfish, a big jellyfish, so transparent you can see what it ate. They can see it even more clearly than that. Many of the devas do. That means your heart, your mind, what you're thinking, what you're hiding, things that you don't even see, they see about you. So the deva knew what he was asking, because he saw that Lord Buddha's heart was happy. So he wanted to confirm and to see whether there was any kind of an attachment, or what's the trick. So Lord Buddha says, "On gaining what, friend?" And then now he's going to ask the opposite. "Do you grieve?" And he says, "On losing what, friend?" And then now the deva is really confused. So he says, "So basically you're saying you neither grieve nor do you rejoice." And he says, "Pretty much." And Lord Buddha gives his responses in a beautiful verse to teach the Dhamma to the deva. In another sutta, another deva comes and asks Lord Buddha, "How did you cross the flood, O recluse?" Because he knows, the deva knows. They can tell arahants, by the way. Many, many devas can tell arahants if the person is an arahant. You don't have to explain it to them, they can see it. And some of the devas can actually spot an arahant to be before that person does. You have many, many suttas where the devas go and whisper to Lord Buddha, "Bhante, Bhante, such and such a bhikkhu, such and such a samaneri, some bhikkhuni is about to hit it. They're going to become an arhat. Which is lovely to think about. So you had one of the devas, divine beings, approach and saw the state of Lord Buddha's heart and said, "How did you cross the flood, O recluse? It's been a long time since I've seen one. A long time." When a deva says a long time, that's a pretty long time. That's talking about several mahakalpas. That means 4 stages of planetary or galactic, universal, worldly evolutions, including the Big Bang, expansion of the Big Bang, reaching that point where it's still, and then the big crunch, when it squeezes. Those 4 stages are called one Mahakalpa. We haven't even reached the end of the expansion yet. They say that it's going to take another few, maybe 10 or another 16.5 or something like that billion years, which is how long it has already taken, 14.2 or something like that billion. That's their estimate. But anyhow, how did you cross the flood? He's asking Lord Buddha. And Lord Buddha says, by neither struggling nor stopping. Excuse me. By neither struggling nor stopping. Now the deva is really curious. He wants some answers, some clarifying, statements from Lord Buddha. And Lord Buddha says, I noticed on my path, when I became too anxious, I began to struggle. And because I struggled, I basically became agitated. I lost focus and I drowned. And similarly, when I stopped, remember, we're talking about crossing the flood. That means swimming. If you flail your arms in the water, anybody who's ever swum in the water, sometimes you have to relax and go with the current and find a nice area, wide enough area, or maybe even dive down to avoid the current and come up to another area, up, surface, and from there. But anything like flailing, you're drowned because you're going to exert whatever little energy that's left in you. So he says, when I stopped struggling and I stopped stopping, now he's clarifying the stopping part. Sooner or later in the religious practice, if one is pursuing, if one is on their quest, they will come across some teachers, some teachings that tell you to just relax, take it easy, don't have any goals, just be one with the universe. That is pretty much stopping. Why do you need to have so many precepts? Take it easy. Why do you need this to practice? Why do you need to go and listen to Dhamma talks? Why do you need to have a teacher? Why do you need to be constricting yourself? Why do you need to follow these steps? No, just be. That's stopping. And he says, whenever I did that, I also drowned. So I figured out, he says, that it's in between. The sweet spot is right in the middle. It doesn't have to be a struggle, but it has to be persevering effort. It has to be genuine effort. It has to be calculated. It has to be goal-oriented effort. It has to be smart effort. It has to be wisely taken steps after you've done some investigating. And not just once. You need to investigate. Like a long-distance swimmer, You need to look where your goal is, and then every once in a while you need to pop your head out of the water and look carefully to see where you're going, and then move accordingly. But you can't keep bobbing your head up and just looking and looking. You're going to drown within 10 meters, especially if there's a powerful current that you're swimming against. That's how I crossed the flood, Lord Buddha says. And Lord Buddha's crossing and our crossing of the flood is no different, the way I see it. Lord Buddha didn't have it easy. Sometimes we think, oh, he had it easy. He didn't have it easy. In fact, his journey was a lot tougher than ours could ever be. And I'm not talking about his previous lives as a bodhisattva, where he was betrayed, stabbed in the back so many times, but he didn't give up. Especially as a human, his last human birth. He had to face a lot of difficulties. But people don't know how to appreciate that. To show your appreciation, you must practice diligently. Because even though he says he gave up struggling, that doesn't mean that he gave up his diligent practice. He practiced with wisdom. So the easiest thing in the world is for you to go ahead and remove one of the saintly figures or things that you worshipped before the Dhamma. It could be, I don't know, academia or something, or even religious oriented. You remove that and you place Nibbana there in its place, you're back to square one. You're stuck. Nothing's changed. Nothing's different. So the Dhamma has to be different, because it is different. So the fruits the Dhamma facilitates for you to have, thanks to your own effort and application, through your own diligent practice, will show you, will demonstrate to you whether you are on the path or you're not, with the reduction of suffering or its addition or its increase. The Dhamma is all there for you to decrease your pain and suffering and dilemmas, the confusion, to decrease those and to increase clarity, to see better and better. Because one thing's going to happen as you're getting closer and closer to that island that you're swimming across the wide open sea to get to, it becomes bigger and bigger. It becomes clearer and clearer. When you didn't even know, because you only had your gut, or you only had someone's word, or you only had read about it. But you need to swim to get to it. But one thing for sure, the closer you are getting to that island, your goal, it's going to become clear. Now, if you get too excited, or if you count yourself having already reached it when you haven't, there goes that. Fortunately, what happens is, prior to you getting closer and closer to the island, your level of understanding is getting deeper and clearer. Your insights are getting more and more frequent. You're not making the same stupid mistakes as you used to. The old tendencies don't show up anymore because they have been eradicated by you and your practice. But if you poke around, and that's one of the jobs that we have to do as practitioners, Lord Buddha advises us to go ahead as practitioners to probe around in our mind, in our psyche, in our emotions, in our bodies, to see if there's still some of those old tendencies. When you are in the state where you used to be, surrounded by these conditions, Are you still in that state? Are you making the same choices, the decisions? Is it toppling you? Are you able to walk away? Are you carrying those with you? Figments of those, Is it part of your memory? Is it you still playing with those in your mind? Are they haunting you? If the answer is no, then you're doing it right. So it becomes clearer and clearer. Now the problem is many people are telling themselves lies. So this is why I keep insisting on practitioners, on students to become no longer hypocrites to themselves and to the Dhamma, and especially to their teacher, because that's what you have today. Hypocrisy has no place where there's Dhamma. Dhamma will get rid of you if your heart is not pure. You can go ahead and vilify the Dhamma, vilify the teacher, vilify the method, come up with reasons. But one thing's for certain, you're going straight in the opposite direction of Dhamma. But that's not why we're here. We're here to go towards the Dhamma, to gain freedom from suffering. And freedom from suffering comes not at the cost of your wisdom, but it comes thanks to your wisdom. And your wisdom has everything to do with identifying what's the yoke and what's the ox. Make sense? Any other questions?
I find it interesting that you talk about craving, that longing for Nibbana somehow passes as if that doesn't count as craving, but it's still the desire, the thirst, the wanting. For me, it was a revelation to discover that, I thought this was okay, but no, it's still craving, it's still heat, it's tension. It's not non-agitation, it's agitation. So it's a great support to be reminded of that craving is craving, doesn't matter for what. It's good as an impetus, motivation for we know where we're going, we know where the goal is, but we have to not unsee the thirst, even if it's for Nibbana.
To take it a step further, you can look at those paths that teach that, on one hand they teach you killing is bad, but on the other they give you a sword and say, go ahead and kill those, because if you kill those, then you're good to go. They're the infidels, they're the, Gentiles, they're the, not us, basically. And the quicker you kill them, the faster you get to God, guaranteed. To me, when you say that, having the longing for Nibbana, that's why I said I'm going to take it a step further, but essentially they are coming from the same foundation, which is absolute ignorance. It is absolutely devoid of anything noble, absolutely devoid of anything that is holy, anything deserving of the title holy, anyhow. People have committed so many crimes in the Dhamma, We always point the finger at Devadatta, the one who tried to kill Lord Buddha at least 3 times, the one who tried to break up the Sangha and failed. But he did end up having his own branch of the Sangha, so in a sense he did succeed. But there's many others. Some of them are contemporaries of ours, here, now, in the 21st century. But again, this is not about others, this is about us. To identify whether we are carrying that ignorance within us. So the sooner you catch yourself holding on to that driftwood and see this big tanker ship that's approaching, whose size can easily obstruct the sun, and you're such a puny little thing, dot floating around in the ocean, you get onto the ship. The captain has stopped his huge ship for you. You jump on it. You let go of the driftwood as soon as possible, because otherwise it's craving, pure and simple. So it's not a pure craving. There can't be any pure, clean craving. It's not going to happen. By the same token, anyone who actually gives donations, generosity, pretends to be generous, and even those that have, let's say, set up an automatic, they send money to this temple, this and that. That's great. It sustains those monasteries, those temples, those monastics, wonderful. But the person, unless they come to cognize the state, and every moment, every time it reaches that point, they put, let's say, a marker, a reminder, a day before, an hour before, and that reminds them, yes, now the funds will be released and go to the monastery. Imagine that you are handing it to them with both hands. Take a moment, 2 seconds, 2 seconds. Close the door, hang up your phone, just go offline and just imagine you're bowing down to Lord Buddha and making that offering. Now even that $1 or $5 or 100 euros, dollars you're giving, it becomes incalculable. And that becomes true dana, that becomes true generosity. It's not like a business transaction anymore. It's not an insurance policy, because sometimes people can do that almost like out of guilt. I don't want to feel guilty. I know in my back of my mind that I'm sending money to this good cause, and that's the end of that. That's wasting a huge opportunity. So this also comes from a place of ignorance, if the person continues doing that, versus taking a moment, giving whatever you can, without extra calculation. This is key. You cannot sit down and financially sit down and really do the numbers, this and that, and come simply from there. Okay, 10% is going to go there. It has a value, but ultimately it needs to be done in the present moment with the full cognizance of what this means. Similarly, every day when you sit to meditate, you need to ask yourself, why am I meditating? To appease someone, a teacher, the Buddha? What? This is when you take it out of the box and you put it into work. You apply it correctly. So that's what comes to mind.